Well, hello and welcome to I Love Gay today. And we are in DC with Ben Finzel. How are you, Ben?
I am fine. I wish you were in DC instead of just virtually chatting with me. It'd
I
be a lot more
know.
fun, but
You and I have often seen each other at so many different events, and in fact, you and I even had plans to do some fun things we'll talk about in a few minutes in DC. But all that's going to be on hold for a little while.
yes, it is. I guess the good news is we're all still here, so that's good, and we're adapting and adjusting and figuring it out.
Exactly. But yeah, in all these years that I've known you, it's just tell us a little bit about so the rest of the world knows who you are, what you do, and what you've been up to.
Sure, thank you. So I am a openly gay communications professional. And I own a PR firm, as you can see behind me, RenewPR in Washington, D.C. And I work on energy, environment, and LGBTQ communications. And I'm sure folks are thinking, those three things don't sound like they go together. Uh, but it really is the culmination of my career. So I'm a DC native. And I have built my entire career in Washington. I worked on Capitol Hill. I was a political appointee in the Clinton administration. I worked at 5 PR firms, and then I started my own.
Yeah.
So my professional career has always been sort of focused around energy and environment. And then I've done what I would call a fair amount of LGBTQ work as well. So I started the first, along with a lot of other people, not just myself. I was one of the folks to start the first global communications practice focused on LGBTQ communications at a global PR firm, and that was Fleischman Hillard in 2003.
Yeah.
We formally launched in 2004. So I worked on that for 5 years, launched our first blog, was the editor of that blog, and worked with colleagues on a bunch of fun things like the Gay Games, and we helped Kodak, and we helped PFLAG with their Stay Close campaign. Lots of really cool stuff. And when I started my own firm 5 years ago, thanks to the generosity of our community and referrals from some folks that I think you know, I was able to start building back doing LGBTQ communications again. So I'm now doing that along with the energy environment piece, and the differentiation there is really helpful in terms of reinforcing as you are, I am a certified LGBT business enterprise by the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce. I try to say that whenever I can, because I hope if of the other business owners who are LGBTQ out there watching this, if you're not certified, go to nglcc.org and get certified. But that point of differentiation is really helpful in terms of building a business and in terms of really demonstrating to folks, even before you start talking, why it's important that they hire you versus maybe somebody else.
I love that. Yeah, no, that's great. And but you also, not only do you and I participate in associations and organizations and conventions and that bring us all together, but I would say that you're unique in that you're also a leader there in DC to help bring people together in the LGBT PR industry, and you've been doing that for a little while. Yes.
Yes. So I guess one of the things that I've done is when I see something that feels like it should be fixed, if no one else is doing it, I just kind of try to do it myself, at least give it a shot. And that's what I'm doing at the moment. So I noticed that there's a whole, I've been in the communications field pretty much my whole career. I mean, if you count the Hill and everything else. And there's a whole lot of us in Washington. There's a whole lot of open LGBTQ comms pros in DC. But even with that, it can be really hard to break in when you're starting your career.
Yeah.
It can be really hard just to advance and get a career. DC, like other places, New York and elsewhere, is all about who you know, right? So I thought it would be really helpful to maybe create a space where that would make it a little bit easier to network. So there's 2 guys in Atlanta who I think you know, Jim Brahms and Drew Plant, who started this group back in 2001, amazingly enough, called Atlanta Family Communicators, which was all about bringing together the very large LGBTQ comms community in Atlanta. And they've been doing that for a number of years. I chatted with them about it, and I had always kind of wanted to do this. So finally 2 years ago, I just said, I'm doing it, here we go. And away we went. So we now have almost 200 members. And these are openly LGBTQ comms pros in DC at every level. So right out of college, just starting their career, older people like me, et cetera, et cetera. And it's really a wonderful way to provide an outlet for folks to learn a little bit more about how to build a career, or to network so that they can build a career. And it's been interesting. We were doing live events, and now we're doing virtual ones, which in some ways has made it a little easier because we've been able to get some really interesting people. I'll have to have you come talk to us. And
I'd
that's
love
been
that.
really fun and really
Yeah.
fulfilling.
No, that's the thing, and that's where you and I were recently chatting because we've been starting a group here up in New York that's all about just trying to bring the advertising, marketing, PR people together in this area, but also kind of taking it on the road. And we had good synergy in terms of being able to just because everything we've typically done has been very partner oriented, and you're a great person to partner with. So we look
Oh,
forward to being able, when things get back to normal a little bit here, we look forward to being able to come to DC in the real world and be able
yes.
to do some of this with you.
Yeah, I think that's so important because it really is. I mean, one of the things about our community that's so wonderful is as big as it is, it's also a small world, and chances are you're 1 or 2 degrees of separation away from somebody that you might want to know for whatever reason. And if we, you, me, others can help bring that about and really help people build their careers and make sure that in this really important industry that really is all about communications,
Yeah.
we are represented and we are there so that we're helping to shape the narrative and helping to really drive the conversation about our lives. And that's really important.
Yeah, and even bringing people together, you're also part of a network in the PR world, yes?
Yes, again, seeing something and realizing it wasn't there and stupidly deciding that, oh, I have free time. Sure, I'll go do that. So I sort of looked around, was chatting with a colleague in the PR industry about doing some multicultural work together.
Yeah.
She's a leader in the African American PR space, along with just PR in general. And we have been talking about working together, and it occurred to me that rather than just the two of us, why not, take a look at really the broader landscape and think about the intersection of multicultural and LGBT work. And this was a couple years ago, so before this year, which obviously has brought all that into stark relief, right?
Yep.
And so we started talking about it, and we together, 6 of us have built the first network of independently owned multicultural and LGBTQ communications firms. There's a whole bunch of great firms out there. Don't get me wrong. There's a bunch of great firms that maybe focus on one community like ours, or the Hispanic community, or African American, or Asian American. But and then there's big networks like firms I used to work at, like Edelman and Fleischman Hillard, that sort of have networks, kind of. But there isn't anything out there that is independently owned firms that are actually run by people in those communities and operated by people with experience doing outreach and engagement in our community.
Yeah.
It's one thing to be LGBTQ, it's another to really understand how to engage with our community, which of course better than most, given what you do.
Yeah.
So it really was about bringing those folks together. So we have 6 agencies, and we go from Maui to New York. And we really do cover the waterfront of African American, Asian American, Hispanic, and LGBTQ communications. We have an affiliate network we work with as well. So our mutual friend, Tanya Churchmuch, is my colleague, the other LGBTQ agency with Much PR right there in New York City. And then we have our colleagues at Storyology in Maui, our colleague Christina, Precise Communications in Atlanta and Miami. That's Alexis Davis Smith. Latricia Harper Woods, who started this all with me, first one I talked to at Mahogany Zan in Phoenix, and our friend Chino Chapa, who is a fellow Red Raider, yes, Texas Tech, in Dallas, Texas. So it's a lot of fun, and it really, it was brought sort of to the fore, I think, this year, given what we've all been experiencing. I mean, we had the one pandemic with COVID, and then along the way, we realized that there's another pandemic, structural racism, that's been around a lot longer that we haven't necessarily always addressed. And so really thinking about, from a communication standpoint, how we can do that. People talk about intersectionality. We're really living that, in terms of thinking about how multicultural and LGBTQ communications are part of a broader narrative that really needs to get out there in the world. And that's what we're trying
fantastic.
to do.
And it's called Change Agency, yes?
I didn't say the name. That's pretty, whoops, yes. It's called The Change Agencies, and you can go to thechangeagencies.com, look at our website, see our wonderful pictures, and read more about us.
No, that's perfect. And I'll make sure, actually, when we post this and share on social media, we'll include some of the links to them as well for you, just so that everybody can kind of easily find everything you're up to, because I think that's important.
I should mention as well, for folks in DC, if you are an LGBTQ comms person in Washington, we'd love to have you as a member of DC Family Communicators. So it's dcfamilycommunicators.com. We have a website. You can go click the link, contact me, send me a note, and tell me you want to join.
That's perfect. And I look forward to seeing you in the real world. I
Yes.
had plans to get down there before everything kind of fell off the cliff here. And but we've been working with DC Pride and doing a lot of work with them, and we've collaborated with others around you. And so we're looking forward to kind of coming down, and we're just postponing that, which just means we'll be down there, just not sure exactly when. And it'd be great, because in that way we could be there with you and kind of reconnect and hopefully bring some new folks in together in the mix as well.
Yes, there are a lot of us, and the more we work together, the better it all is, I think.
I love that. Well, thanks so much for being here with us.
You're welcome. Thank you. Great to see you.
You too. And look forward to, like I said, catching the real world.
Yes. Take
All
care.
right, you. All right. Bye-bye now.
Bye.